Welcome to Body Hack and Build a Better You, the podcast where we unlock the secret to living a longer, healthier life and create a bloom zone in our life and within our family. I'm your host, Michaela Morell, and I'm here to provide you with the tools and knowledge to empower you to build a better you, one essential building block at a time. Today, we're talking about last week's event I was at in Phoenix, Arizona, and how this lovely, amazing couple influenced the podcast episode for today. As I wanted to point out to the world that there are many talented people out there that still have missed this key factor in health. So if you don't want to miss out, come and learn. I want to remind you that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Read the disclaimer in the show notes, and I remind you to always consult your healthcare provider if you plan to make any dietary changes. But now it's time for the episode, so let's dive in. Welcome to Body Hacking Build a Better You podcast. And today I am back in Norway. And last week I was at a seminar in United States in Phoenix, Arizona. And it inspired me to record a podcast today that wasn't planned, but I just felt the need to express my gratitude and also being so joyful because the omega ratio I talk a lot about, I found out about that about 5 years ago. And one of the podcasts I was listening to starting to fully understand it was why the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is important by Dr. Artemis Simopoulos, and she's an MD. But she had basically been using her whole life at understanding the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. And at this event I was at last week in Phoenix, Arizona, and on stage was this lovely couple. And I think they were talking about having researched the blue zones for 27 years, and they've been traveling all over the world. They have been looking at what people are eating, what habits they're having, how much they're walking, and how much the community plays a role in their longevity. So when they have been spending all of that time and researched, and suddenly they start opening up their eyes for omega balance, of having a good ratio between the omega-6s and omega-3s, and how they started measuring their own health and how they were surprised because they were already taking omega-3 supplementations, but they were still far away from being in omega ratio. So that leads me into another conversation I had today, that when someone asked me, but what if you have a good omega-3 brand or supplementation, a high quality one, can you just use that? So I just asked, what is really a good quality omega supplement? Well, something that have a low index of oxidation. But when are we measuring that? In a bottle? Because it doesn't really matter what an omega supplement is doing in a bottle. It matters what it does in our body, and we cannot know that unless we are testing it. Well, that was a side note with a personal trainer today. But back to the story about this couple, this lovely couple that have been traveling all over the world. And they're very famous people within their area and their niche. And they're traveling all over the world and they're speaking on big stages. And suddenly they start understanding and gaining more knowledge about being an omega ratio. So this couple, they were sharing their numbers up on stage. I will not share it on their behalf, but let's just say that they were far away from being in the right ratio where you want it to be. And suddenly they started calculating a little bit more accurately what they really needed. And with that change, and with them taking a second blood test and seeing that they were in omega balance, they started also reaping the benefits of having a body that was in balance. But what was so interesting about their speech was not about how their body had been affected by the omega ratio. I mean, that is always very exciting, and I'm always treasuring people's results. But the interesting part I found was these people have been traveling all over the world. And they have been researching how we can live healthier for as long as possible in these blue zones. And when they now go back to their research, because now they are seeing things with different eyes, with different lenses, and they're going back to their research and they're looking through it and they say, we have missed the omega balance, and we can clearly see that where people have been living longer, healthier lives, those areas usually have very low levels of omega-6 intake, and they have a good amount of omega-3 intake. So the ratio would naturally be more balanced. And now when they're looking back at all of that research, they start seeing the connections, and they're so thrilled over understanding this. And this was something I understood 5 years ago after listening to Dr. Simopoulos' podcast episode. And I encourage everyone to go and listen to that. She still misses a few key points that I've learned during the road, but she is so inspirational, and she has spent so much of her life researching this. And she's truly someone that you should go and listen to. And this just makes me joyful that more and more people start understanding it. They start everything is pointing in that direction. And people are reaping the benefits of just measuring and aiming for a better balance in every single cell of your body. And within sports, you're always aiming for 1% better. If you can just perform 1% better. And then what if you can take every cell in your body and increase the cell function with 1%, the energy production with 1%? Then what? And that's, my friend, something that makes me, my whole body is so excited for educating about this, because it is possible. It is possible if the cells are not functioning properly and we're able to measure and we're able to improve the cell function, how the cell membrane is functioning, how our hormone receptors are functioning, and everything in between, and the communication between the cells, we can even increase it with more than 1%, depending on where we're starting, of course. But that is what is so exciting. And if you want to understand how important the ratio is for aging, longevity, and for our body to stay as healthy as possible, I encourage you to go to Google Scholar or PubMed and just search for the importance of omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Read that report and then go to the podcast and listen to Dr. Simopoulos. And then come back and learn more in my podcast. What can happen when you're focusing on getting in omega balance? Thank you, everyone that are tuning in. And thank you for the overwhelming response I've had this week. I've had so many people everywhere from Pennsylvania to UK to Bulgaria to Norway expressing their gratefulness for my podcast. And guys, I'm grateful for you being here, and I'm grateful for every share you're doing. Thank you guys for being here. Ciao, ciao. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to do one thing for me. Think of one person you want to share this podcast with and copy the link and send it right away. Thanks for playing an important role in the Blue Zone community. And if you want to keep on building a better you, one essential building block at a time, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next episode.